podcast comes to you with thanks to our friends at Trafalgar Square Finance, leading independent specialists in mortgages and all types of property finance. Whether it's buy-to-let, development or bridging finance, Trafalgar Square can help you organise your funding for your next property project. Exclusively to listeners of Your Property Podcast, Trafalgar Square offer a free one-to-one consultation. So whether you are a portfolio landlord looking to raise funds on your existing portfolio, or if you're just starting out and want to find out if you are eligible for a buy-to-let mortgage, Trafalgar Square Finance can help. It's easy to book with one of their experienced consultants by simply visiting yourpropertynetwork.co.uk/finance. You can find this link in the show notes for more details. Hello and welcome to Your Property Podcast. My name is Michelle Cairns and today we have got with us Sarah Lloyd. Hi Sarah.
Hi.
Good to have you on with us today. And how are you doing today? Let's start with what have you been up to today? We're recording in December, so 7th of December.
Things are really good. Thank you. Busy at the moment. Things are crazy going into the new year, but it's all very exciting. I've been spending quite a lot of time looking at the strategy for next year, what we want to work on in the business and things like that. So really enjoying it, really looking forward to some target setting. But yeah, just getting a head down and getting going.
Great. Well, I met you at a networking meeting, PIN meeting, not too long ago, and you are probably one of our youngest guests that we had through the PIN, and obviously probably one of our youngest guests through the podcast as well. So, so how old are you now, and how long have you been in property?
So I'm 21 now. I turned 21 in August, and then I've been in property since I was 18, so 3 years now, which feels like a long time. I know it's theoretically not, but it feels like a long time.
Well, it depends how you count the days, right? Some people repeat the 100%. Same year every year for 20 years. Okay, yeah. And you know, so you've been in property longer than a lot of people who have been listening, and for also people who are listening and they have been in property 20 plus years themselves. It's really great to have somebody on who's got the that kind of fresh energy of just starting out as well, and perhaps aware of things that people who've been in it a long time might not be aware of as well. So there's lots of benefits to being young and starting out, that's for sure.
100% agree.
So what made you get into property, I guess? So let's start at 18 then. Most 18-year-olds are kind of, out at uni and enjoying kind of the uni lifestyle away from parents and things. So how did you get on a different path?
Yeah, so I think, it's probably very relevant. A lot of my friends are still either in the last years now of uni, or they're sort of taking a year out, or potentially just starting work. So I think it's fair to say that I'm not sort of on the same wavelength as a lot of my peers. I did go to uni. I started a degree actually in nursing as soon as I left school, and I decided pretty quickly that it wasn't really the option that I wanted to go down. I think I quite quickly realised that I didn't really like the uni lifestyle anyway, so I didn't want to go out drinking all the time, and I didn't really see myself like living in a career in that sort of sector. So I quickly left uni, went back home, and then was really looking for something else. I actually just got a job in a letting agency, classically as you do when you turn 18, your parents make you pay rent.
Yeah.
So I just moved home. I got a job in a letting agency. I knew someone that owned one, so I got a job there. And it all sort of spiraled from there. I mean, I guess the real factor for me was that I was watching all of these rent remittance statements coming through, and I was seeing how much rent all these landlords were getting, and I was taking basically peanuts out of it for doing all of the work. And I was like, this is really not what I wanted to be doing my time. And I realized actually how good of an investment and things like that property itself is. I'm very lucky. I've got family that own property and things like that as well. So I was very reluctant to ever get involved, sort of until I saw these remittance statements was coming through, and I was thinking, actually, this is probably quite a good business to get involved in.
But lots of people work in letting agents, and they see the same, the same invoices coming through and everything, but they don't, I guess, choose to to kind of get involved and become a landlord themselves, and certainly not kind of down the, going down the property education route as well, which I know you've done. So how did you get involved in kind of in that side of things?
Yeah, so I started going to the PIN meetings literally as soon as I left uni. As soon as I started working in a letting agency, I knew about Swansea PIN, which I now host 3 years on, which is kind of crazy, but I started going there. And that's sort of where I started to understand about the education, the different strategies, understanding, where you can be lucrative, how you get deals and things like that. And I decided to go on and do Simon's 12-month program. So that was, just the start of the education, really. I started that. I've since gone on and I'm doing Dan Hill's property entrepreneur program as well. I think the main thing is education is key, because everything's always changing. Nothing stays the same, certainly not in this market with property, with mortgages, with market rates. Everything is changing all the time. And understanding, ultimately, when I first got into property, I had my uni savings, which was about £3,000. And the reality was I was never going to start going and buying houses where I needed £30,000 to £50,000 worth of deposits. So it wasn't going to happen. And so going down the route of getting educated simply just came about because I wanted to find a way that I could do it without needing, the £50,000 worth of deposit and refurbishment monies. And basically start from there. And you're right, there are a lot of people that will go and work in a letting agency and will look at those remittance statements every single week, day, whatever, and never think anything of it. But for me, I did not want to sit behind a computer screen for the next 40, 50 years processing rents for other people, and getting nothing, minimal nothing for it. It just, for me, that wasn't the way I wanted to do it. I think there's such a shortness about life, and being able to enjoy it and spend it with the people that you want to, doing the things that you want to do. When I think, I was sat there at 18, 19 and was like, this is not what I want to be doing. And it literally just came out of that. It was a desire basically to stop working, despite the fact I hadn't done it for very long.
Well, a lot of people, they get 10 plus years down the line, then they realize that they don't want to be doing it, but you kind of just shortcut that, right?
Shortcut, 100%.
Yeah. And so obviously you're starting out, you've got £3,000 and you are keen and enthusiastic and fresh to all of these new strategies. So how did you decide which one to start with, and where did you start?
Yeah, so I think one of the most important things that I realised quite early on is that there are so many strategies, and that not every single one of them is right for everybody. And it's so easy to go in, it's called shiny penny syndrome, isn't it? You go in thinking, oh, I want to do that, and I want to do that, and I want to do that. And before you know it, you're sort of absolutely bogged down with too many different types of deals to be done. You're trying to, do a million miles, a million things at once, and it's just not practical. And I think for me, I came to quite a quick realization that I didn't want to get into some of the really high cash flowing strategies and quick turnarounds. Although that sounds back to front, the reality was, for me, I have time. Theoretically, I have time. I don't need loads of money now to replace a really high salary to pay for mortgages and kids and all of that kind of stuff. I don't have that. A smaller amount of cash flow would do me absolutely fine. But actually, I needed equitable growth. I needed long-term strategy. So for me, I just went down the route of family single lets, because, it was the least stressful, the least amount of work, but I still get the long-term gain out of it, which is what I needed. Now, I'm not saying HMO and rent-to-rent strategies aren't amazing, because they are, but they're just not amazing for me. That's someone else's strategy.
Yeah, I think you make a really important point there. This shiny penny syndrome is... each strategy is so appealing because they all work, right? They all work for different people who are in different circumstances. So you're right there that choosing a strategy that suits you and where you're at the moment, what you're looking to achieve, is really important if you're going to be successful in it. But a lot of people don't get started in single lets because they don't have the deposit money for a start. So how did you work that one out?
So I get asked this quite a lot. I did do one rent to rent, but it was a single let. So people often don't believe that you can do single let rent to rents because the margins aren't big enough, which I will put my hands up and say I think it's incredibly hard to find a single let rent to rent deal. However, it was the first one that I came about, and it works, and it works really well. I used actually my uni savings, my £2,000-3,000 for that. So I put some money into that, and that was absolutely fantastic. I've still got that now. But the single lets that I've bought, of course, as you say, I didn't have a deposit, I didn't have refurbishment money, and I knew that I needed to find a way that meant if I borrowed money or for whatever reason, I could essentially pay that back. So what I decided to do was basically use investors funds. So I worked with other investors on a loan basis, not a JV basis. I hadn't done deals with them before, so I didn't want to jump straight into a 50-50 deal with them. Where they had some cash in the bank, it wasn't quite grabbing them enough interest. And essentially we used that for the deposit and the refurb. And then we remortgaged. So generally the properties are probate sales and they need a lot of work. I've got problems, that kind of thing. We did a lot of work to them and then remortgage them. And then on the remortgage, we pull back out the investors' money and pay them back, which in essence is no money in. I've made mistakes in there. I've had problems. I've gone over budget. I've had problems where I've miscalculated an interest or something like that. And it has put me in a little bit of a tricky situation. But at the end of the day, you know, a lot of the investors that I've worked with know how early I was starting out. It was all about honesty. It was all about figuring out, you know, a long-term solution with some of them, and that worked absolutely fine. But that is the route that I had to go down.
Oh, okay. And I'm sure you're not the only one that's made mistakes. Certainly, no. Not even at the beginning. I think, you know, we've all been there, so for sure. Yeah. So you were buying these properties cash and in just your name then. So they would lend you the cash to buy it outright. Is that?
No, it's actually different. So I wasn't buying them cash. I was buying them with bridging finance, because at the time because I needed work, it was okay because I was looking at either a bridge to let product or I was looking at basically remortgaging out. But I was just looking at the bridging products. And then I was buying in a company as well. So the big challenge that I had was that when I was actually buying the first house, I wasn't employed. I didn't have any savings in my savings account because I'd used that to do my rent to rent. And essentially, I was living at home. I didn't own anything else. You know, if you lay it all like that, I was pretty basically unmortgageable. And so buying in my own name was going to be near enough impossible. We decided to buy in a company in which I could actually default around quite a lot of those problems. And actually having bought it in on a bridge and then remortgaging out actually solved a lot of our problems. So if we'd have gone straight in on a mortgage, we'd have found it much harder. Whereas when we were able to bridge, we could then do the work, get tenants in, and then remortgage based on the tenant income. So it made it much easier to do it that way.
Yeah, I was going to say, so did you need 6 months of tenancy, you know, proof of income, and then obviously for your first property you were a landlord for 6 months to get the mortgage, or didn't that matter because it was a company?
So we had the 6 months. It had to be a minimum 6 month turnaround anyway, but we took a little bit longer to do the work, so that was fine. It didn't make too much of an issue. But we didn't have a challenge with how long the families had been in there. We basically provided their contract and their proof of payment, so that we had their deposit and we had their first couple of months rent, and that was literally it. And they took that to basically base how much we could afford on the mortgage.
Oh, okay, great. And a single let's going to be, are you going to stick with that as a strategy, or are you tempted by any of the other ones?
No, I am going to stick with them. I think, you know, I do sometimes have to reel myself in, and sometimes I get a bit distracted, and sometimes, you know, a deal comes over and I'm like, oh, actually that could work really well, or that makes quite a lot of money. And I think sometimes I've just got to hold fire. And, you know, if don't get me wrong, if a really good deal came through and I couldn't turn it down, then I would take it, because, you know, who wouldn't at the end of the day? But, you know, I don't proactively look for anything other than single lets and stuff like that, because I want to try and stick with the one thing that I know well, and just do that.
And for single lets, I know you said earlier, you know, people think that it's hard to work with perhaps joint venture partners or investors, yeah, and typically I call it a double profit. So you need a profit for the investor to make sure that they get paid back, and then profit, yeah, for you as well. But are you only looking for deals where the investor gets all their money out, or you know, are you looking for deals where you need that extra buffer in the cash flow to pay them?
So in an ideal world, we want to pay them all completely back. Ultimately, I think from a security perspective for them as well, once the deal's done, the remortgage has happened, and they've got all their money back, they don't have to worry about the market turning or anything changing for the value of the house, any of that kind of stuff. They've got their money back, and that's great. And obviously, from our point of view, then we don't have to pay interest on any money that's held in. However, practically sometimes that just doesn't happen, and the remortgage, so it might be a down valuation, it might have gone over budget over time, and there might have been miscalculations. Ultimately anything could go wrong, and if you don't quite meet the amount of money, then you have to leave it in long term, which is what we have done before, and just agreed, and that just, some of that money comes out of the cash flow, which is fine, and it works for us because it's still positive. We're still making money from it, and at the end of the day, we've got the long-term asset. But from a practicality point of view, we like to look and make sure that everyone gets all their money out on remortgage.
Yeah, and as you said at the beginning, it's a long-term strategy. So
100%.
Yeah. And where do you find these investors? Let's say, where did you find them at the beginning? Because obviously now, if you're hosting networking events and you're raising your profile on social media, etc., you might attract a different type of investor.
Yeah.
But at the beginning, getting started, was it family and friends, or?
So I actually met investors through networking. I'd obviously built up a relationship. So I had a relationship with two of the investors, non-family investors that I used. I'd known them for 9 months, and they did my first deal and the deposit of my second deal. And then I had a distant family member who put in the refurb work for the second one that I did. And as you say, as I've sort of now started hosting meetings or speaking meetings and things like that, that it comes from different places. But yeah, the first one I'd actually met through networking. I think the only thing that I think people sometimes, I want to say, underestimate, it does take quite a bit of time. It did take me about nine months of knowing these people, having these conversations, discussing the deals that I'd had, going through things. Other deals that maybe I didn't go ahead with, I'd spoken to them previously. I could show that I knew my area and I knew the numbers and everything like that. It didn't happen overnight, but they actually were people that I met through networking. Yeah.
Well, okay, great. And so when it comes to single lets, obviously you said you worked, you're doing this through a company and on a bridge, because typically buy-to-let lenders aren't keen. It's not as easy to have private investors as the deposit money. So did you find that straightforward, doing that with the bridge?
Yeah, I think as it was a bridge, it was much easier because there's a lot more bridging products that allow you to use investors' money as a deposit. Going straight into a mortgage, we'd have found that more difficult. What we did find is that we didn't really ask when we remortgaged where the deposit money came from. So once we'd owned it, it wasn't so much of an issue. The only thing, I think, I couldn't have done any of it without was a good mortgage broker, because as I say, given the situation that I was in, I didn't really have a credit history. I didn't have an income. I didn't have savings. I was using someone else's money. I was doing it in a company. If you could name almost all the problems that I could have had, I did. So getting a specialist mortgage broker, a whole of market specialist mortgage broker that could actually offer the best product for the situation that I was in. Without them, I wouldn't be able to do the bridge or the remortgages. But I do think having gone through a bridge in the first place, although it was a little bit more expensive, it actually made it possible. So yeah, I think sometimes it doesn't matter if things are more expensive if they make the deal possible. If the deal still works, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's really encouraging to see that you've just found a way, as you said, that you can sit and list out all the reasons why you couldn't do it, and for most people that would just put them off and they wouldn't bother even picking up the phone. But actually, you found a lender that that is happy with those criteria and happy to lend. So it's amazing. It's really encouraging for people, because I know a lot of people listening to this, they might not be in employment, or they might be just starting out and thinking, how do I do this? How do I work it out? So that's great. And okay, so then obviously you're hosting the networking meeting, which one was it? Sorry, Swansea. Yeah. And it's interesting, obviously, because you're seeing a lot of different speakers come through and meeting people in the area. So how do you find that people, are they Are they, because you've got a very kind of natural positive energy about you as well, so what do you think the benefits are of being kind of younger and starting out in this industry?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I got a massive like benefit from was when I first bought my house, I went from thinking that £3,000, because that's all I'd ever seen in my savings account, £3,000 is a lot of money. And I went in and borrowed, 50 grand for a deposit and some refurb money, and then I owned a house that was worth, on its remortgage, 200,000, and then it was a case of increasing the portfolio. And I think I did all of the first deal. I put the deposit in, I did the viewings, I agreed, the sale, I got the solicitors involved, and then I don't think I realised until after I'd done it all, I was like, what have I just done? And I think actually almost some of the naivety of not having experienced problems with purchasing houses or all of that kind of stuff, because I was almost a little bit naive to it, I just went in with no fear, and that's how I did the deals. I don't think I'd have done them if I didn't just bite the bullet and go and turn up to meetings and start calling estate agents and stuff like that. And I think, as a young person who hasn't experienced all of the problems of buying your own property and market terms, I was diddly when we had the big market crash in 2007, 2008. So like, I don't remember any of that. I never experienced any of it. And so I'm always naive to some of the problems that I think a lot of older people might be like, oh, well, what if this happens, or what if that happens? So, I just didn't think about half of it. And so I just went straight in at the deep end. And, don't get me wrong, I made sure that the deals were right. And I made sure that the investors understood, where their money was going and all of that kind of stuff. But it was a case of, I think there was hardly any fear, because I'd never had to be in that situation before. So I think, that is one of the benefits of doing it younger.
And you made the decision to invest in your education as well, and not just, doing this. So you weren't completely on your own. You had coaches, mentors, other people in the group that you could ask advice from. So I think that's really important. And how did that affect your sort of investing strategy, I guess, or your confidence? Did that happen?
I think it's massive. And I think people say you pay to learn. Either way you pay, you get the education up front, or you pay because you've made a mistake and you're now paying for that mistake. I think people pay for their education one way or another. And I think having someone to relay off questions or problems or queries or anything like that, concerns that I had, having someone to relay that off, have that conversation with, was incredibly useful. And I think also accountability, like just having someone that checks in on you. Like I remember having a conversation with someone who was basically, I didn't want to call estate agents. I was really scared of it. And what's the worst they can say? No. And I was just like, but it really petrified me. I didn't know what to say if they said, oh, sorry, no, or anything like that. And being turned away, it was all, it was all really big, like fearful thing. And so I was refusing to call estate agents. And I spoke to this person, and she said, and she was like, all right, I'll set you a challenge. She was like, the worst thing they're going to do is say no. Call 10 estate agents in the next week, and we'll have a call next week and see how it went. And I did it. The next day I picked up the phone. I had a list of 10 estate agents ready to go. And I thought, you know what, instead of like, wandering about and doing one today and one tomorrow, I was like, I'm just going to do all 10 now. I was like, I know what my criteria is. I know the questions I need to ask. I know what I'm looking for. And I called all of them, and I had so much adrenaline. I was like, I just need to go and take a nap. And I did. And it turns out one of the properties that I bought actually came from one of those calls. Wow. So, even just having someone to push you a little bit out of your comfort zone, it can make so much difference.
Go on. Well, let's dive into those conversations then, because I think, a lot of people are put off by talking to agents, for or estate agents, and they don't know what to say. And worse than that, they're anticipating them saying, well, where are you getting your money from? And who are you? And what background have you got, etc. And where are your proof of funds? And for people working with investors, that's a bit, that question can throw you, right? So because the first thing they do is try and take all your details down. So how did those conversations go? What did you say? And what did you say when they challenged you?
The first thing is every time I went to call an estate agent. So now I'll only really call agents when I've seen a specific property or something like that. So I don't really have so much of it anymore. However, like I do call them up and they're like, oh well, let's get you on the system, and then what's all your criteria and everything. As you know, I make sure I know exactly the location that I'm looking for, and be specific as well, because if you're not specific enough, they'll just give you everything. So be specific on the location, how many bedrooms you want, price, and I would always go over budget of whatever your budget is, because people like sellers will reduce the price. You know, if you're looking to buy at 180 maximum, you would easily put in 200, if not 250, because one day it might come back down to where you are. You can always get into those viewings and negotiate. So go over the budget of whatever your budget is that's set. And then whatever the problems are that you're looking for, you know, for me it was always things like, have you got any properties that have been reduced drastically? Anyone that's looking to sell really quickly? You got any probate sales? You got any that need quite a bit of work? That includes structural. That's not a problem at all. And I'll go in with a list of things that you know I think would give me the deals that I was looking for. You know, buying low, needing a lot of work, and then being able to remortgage out. And so I went in asking those questions. I had all those questions pre-prepared. And then I would some of them would list off some properties that they've got, would like to book in a viewing, yeah, great, and tick it like that. And I think that, you know, that was really valuable, because it gave them a really good starting point. I wasn't just going in and be like, oh, have you got anything on the market? You know, I'm really specific. I clearly know what I want. I know what my budget is. I know what I'm looking for. And I think a lot of it is like your appearance matters. So I mean, obviously if you're calling on the phone, it's not physically, but it's how you come across. You know, if you're confident, if you turn up to viewings with pre-prepared questions about a property, about an area, or anything like that, they're going to take you a lot more seriously than if you sort of just rock up and hope for the best, and just have a dawdle around and look around, take photos, take videos, say, oh, can I take a video for this for my builder, or anything like that. And it just sort of hints to them that you're that much more serious than, you know, anybody who just walked in looking for a property.
Yeah, and people forget so often that, you know, if they've done even a little bit of property education, they'll know more than what the agents know in terms of how you can make a deal out of a property and be creative. So it's sort of having that in mind when you're having that conversation as a bit of a secret power, and certainly not coming across like you do know more. But as you say, they're having that kind of confidence and the clarity, and just being very kind of, you know, assertive in what you are looking for. Then that really helps. Great. Okay. So and was it as bad as you thought?
No. I mean, you know, I had a lot of adrenaline. I just find it very difficult. And like, as I said, afterwards, I was absolutely knackered. Like I just had no energy left in me. But I think, you know, as I say, they came back, some of them came back with suggestions. Some of them I got added to their follow-up list, of which, you know, properties have come through and I've gone through and carried on with them. You know, at the end of the day, if you don't ask, you don't get. So, you know, if you don't call the agent or anything like that, if you don't send landlord letters or whatever the strategy is, you know, you can't expect people just know that you're looking. It works, you know, obviously works both ways. I think it's one of those things, it's biting the bullet. Once you're doing it, it's not so bad. It's the thoughts leading up to doing it.
Definitely. And so where are you up to now? What are you looking to kind of be focusing on? You've got your single let strategy ticking over. And then how do you spend your day?
Yeah, so my actual sort of main day-to-day business, I'm actually an interior designer. So I work basically with clients all over the UK, mainly like developers and things, like small developers. We look at doing CGIs and walkthroughs and all of that kind of stuff, which is really exciting. I really like it, given the fact I've got a property background as well. So yeah, that's, to be honest, that's where I spend most of my time at the moment. I talk about strategy for the year ahead. A lot of it's to do with that. But yeah, I mean, as I say, the single lets, the property is ticking over sort of month by month, year by year, and that'll just sort of grow. But yeah, at the moment it's full focus and full steam ahead on all things interior design.
And so you mentioned there's CGIs, and do you want to explain to people who aren't familiar with that what
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so basically what we aim to do is allow someone to see their project before it's finished. So ultimately we use computer generated images, which is CGI, which basically show finished rooms. So all sorts of furnishings, you know, the walls, flooring, everything, basically all the fixtures and fittings before the work starts. So if you want to change your mind, if you're not happy with what you've given the builder, you can do all of that basically before the work starts. So saves a lot of time, a lot of money. It can be used for all sorts of stuff, from literally just planning to all the way through to advertisement. So.
Right. And do people give you, let's say they've got a specific kitchen that they're going to buy that's going to the property, they will do that? Or is it sort of earlier than that in the stages where you're kind of just giving somebody an idea of the space and what can be done with it?
Yeah, either. So from January, we're starting basically a new product system where we basically run 3 products, or you can buy all of them as a VIP package. So we can do things like the design stage. So right at the beginning, before anything's been bought, and we'll take them all the way through, you know, the designs and CGIs, the walkthroughs, and then a product list at the end. Or you can just do certain parts. So for example, they might want a little bit of spatial mapping, they might want to see what it looks like, but they don't need the design doing, or they don't need the list of all the products and stuff like that, or vice versa. So I mean, it's custom to nth degree. You know, there's a certain degree of which we will go custom, but we offer three different areas, or all of them combined.
All right, okay. And these are mainly for developers. Is it mainly build to sell, or for people, let's say they're doing HMO and they want to advertise their rooms early? Could you design a HMO room, or is it more for bigger developers?
Yeah, 100%. So we do look in the HMO and the serviced accommodation market. So you know, we do offer services for both of them. Generally, they'll either be higher end or bigger projects. So it might be, you know, a 6-bed HMO or bigger, or something like that, or really high end, you know, say London apartment or something along those lines. Or we'll go build to rent and build to sell development. So bigger projects, that's, you know, new bed houses or blocks of apartments, that kind of thing.
Amazing. And do people need to can they take photo on their phone, or do they have to have professional photographs to do that?
So we can go with literally anything from a hand-drawn floor plan and their photos from their phone, all the way through to architectural designs, approved plans and things like that. So we can literally take a hand-drawn floor plan and turn it into everything that they would need.
Amazing. God, that sounds very creative.
Thank you.
Well, if you want to, where can people find out more about this and what you're up to?
Yeah, so everything is pretty self-explanatory in terms of all the names will match across the way. So we've got a website, which is sl.interiors.uk, and then email us sarah@sl.interiors.uk, and then all of our social media platforms, so Instagram, Facebook, are sl.interiors.wales. So they can hit us up anywhere. I'm more than happy to have a discussion, a one-on-one conversation, no commitment.
Fantastic. Well, we'll put all those links in the show notes for people, and yeah. And so anything that we haven't discussed that you want to mention, anything new on the horizon for next year apart from the interior design?
No, I think you know,
I thought you've got enough, to be honest.
Yeah, busy enough as it is. I think it's just okay. So this is going to be our you know, big year not only for the businesses but for me as well. You know, this is it's time to level up, time to make a big step change, and start pushing the boundaries. So yeah,
definitely. Oh well, we're really looking forward to watching your progress, and hopefully you'll have you on again in the future and see what's happened. I will take care and all the best, and yeah, we'll put the links to those in the show notes for everyone. So thank you.
Thank you for having me.
No worries. And for anyone who is not yet a subscriber to the magazine, there's a link in the show notes as well for your free 30-day trial, where you can see more about people like Sarah who are investing in property and education business. So we will see you in the new year, guys. Take care. Bye-bye.